Welcome, one and all, to the show. Wired up, fired up, and ready to go. BlueTruth, New York Rangers talk, powered by the Sportsbox Network with yours truly, Brian Attard. Like, follow, and share. We appreciate that. Those of you who have joined the live stream, thank you for watching live. If you're watching the YouTube replay, thank you for that as well. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button. Maybe you will join the live stream one of these occasions. Tonight is November the 18th, 2025. The Rangers will play their 21st game of the season in just a little bit, about 90 minutes from now. They're visiting the Vegas Golden Knights tonight. We will probably take you most of, if not all the way, to puck drop tonight. So we are officially 20 games into this season. I'm just trying to tag something here. Maybe there we go. I think that worked. Let's see. Anyway, about quarter of the way through the slate. It is a good opportunity to take stock of where has the team been? Where are they as they enter the second quarter of the season? It has been an interesting, put it that way, interesting first 20 games, to say the very least. Dimitri, brother, good evening. How are you, sir? Autumn Brunet, let's go Rangers. Mike, what's up, brother? How are you? Hank and Dictor. How many periods? I might get to 2. If the over-under is 1.5, I think I would take the over. If the over-under is 2.5, I would probably either bet the under or stay away. Mark, they're all good. Aren't they all good? You tell me. Anyway. So, let's kind of start as to, where they are, right? It's been 20 games. I've wanted to get into this for a few weeks, but I decided that the best thing to do is just kind of let things settle out before we took time to really, really react to things. If it's one thing that I pride myself on with BlueTruth, it's that we do our absolute best to stay as even keel as possible. We try not to overreact. We try not to react prematurely. So I kind of just wanted to let water find its level with this team before we started to break down something that hadn't even yet taken any sort of true form, right? It's really why we try to only do a certain number of lives every year. From October to April, it's so easy. And JT Miller said this in some comments, right? It's so easy to overreact to things, make them bigger than they really are when you're rushing to talk about so few of these games at any given time. It's a formula we've had since the beginning, and it works. I feel it does work for what I do here. Tonight is episode 49 of a podcast that's been around since May of 2021, to put that in perspective, right? So, we try to space these things out and just let things happen so we can react to them and then talk about them. Again, I was looking at maybe something like 8 or 10 games ago, but just kind of given where everything was with the team, it just made sense to give it some time, let things kind of settle out, which they have, frankly, to an extent. Following Sunday night's loss to Detroit, the Rangers find themselves through 20 games with a 10-8-2 record. That ranks them 10th in the Eastern Conference. They have won 7 of their last 10 games after winning just 3 of their first 10 games. So it's been an interesting start. 9 games at home, 11 on the road. On the road, they enter tonight's game in Vegas with a 9-1-1 record. That is the best road record in the National Hockey League. The only blemishes away from home are an ugly loss in Calgary, where they just looked dead from the very beginning, and an overtime loss in Toronto on a play that, Mika Zibanejad would sure love to have back. Other than that, they've just been excellent on the road. Conversely, at home, they won their first game 8 days ago, a 6-3 win over the Predators. Prior to that, they were a robust 0-6-1, with the sole points coming from an overtime loss to San Jose. I have been there. They were shut out 5 times in their first 7 home games. So, after the loss to Detroit, the Rangers are now 1-7-1 in 9 games at home, 4 of which are losses in those new Centennial jerseys. And I did buy a JT Miller for those who were keeping score at home. Frustration's been real. Frankly, it's been justified. For a team like this one that has dealt with curses over the years, of course, your mind starts to travel towards that idea. And like clockwork, Dave Fibo, one of our favorite Blue Truthers, I enjoy interacting with him quite a bit. He has been known to say they should play all 82 on the road. And for a while there, he certainly had a point. As the comment comes in, I've been calling MSG the world's quietest arena, play all 82 on the road. So I appreciate Dave giving me that ball for me to spike right there. The difference between the home and road records is obviously very clear, but it does seem to me to be more of an anomaly than anything else, right? They have not had much trouble scoring in road games. The struggles at home, I think, are one of those things where, it starts off poorly and then it becomes a mental thing. And then it compounds onto itself. When you're shut out, they were shut out 3 straight times at home to start the year. And if you look back at those games, it isn't as if they played poorly. They just didn't score, right? So what happens then, that happens twice and 3 times. They're a hockey team, they're professional athletes, they're all millionaires, but they're human too. And it becomes a mental thing. And you just kind of rolling that around in your head, like, oh, when are we going to score? Are we ever going to score? That whole jazz there. What you've probably seen a lot of or heard a lot of over the first 20 games, this idea of expected goals. What's an expected goal? Some of you know what that means. Some of you don't know what that means. Some of you refuse to understand what that means, and that's your prerogative. It's really not difficult to understand, but I just want to take about just a minute or two and just explain what that is. So boil it down to its very, very basic. An expected goals measures shot quality rather than just a raw number of shots on goal where all shots are treated the same no matter where they come from. Expected goals represents an accumulation of scoring chances graded by their quality. That might sound pretty simple because it is. It's really not that difficult. You don't need me to tell you that a shot from the slot has a much better chance of going in the net than a shot from the point. That's why a shot from the slot is a higher expected goal than a shot from the point. The expected goals figure just adds up all the unblocked shot attempts based by quality into a number. So why should we care? Games are decided by actual goals, right? Not expected goals. So who cares? Well, yeah. You do need to score more goals than your opponent to win a hockey game. This is not breaking news. Clearly. But analytics, like expected goals, give you some insight into how well the team is playing, both offensively and defensively. If a team is consistently generating a high expected goals number, what it really means is that they're generating quality chances. If a team is consistently limiting the opposition's expected goals number, it means that they're defending very well. And the chances that they do allow are of lower quality. So, sure, the actual goals decides a game, right? Nobody ever would say otherwise. However, you can identify how well a team is playing with analytics like expected goals, Corsi, and other ones, sure. Are they generating a lot of high-quality chances and just running into hot goaltending or having trouble finishing? Are they generating very little, but they're running well and they're scoring above what you would expect for the chances that they're creating? These are questions that you can answer using some of these numbers, right? So the Rangers have allowed so far the second fewest high danger chances in the league at 5-on-5. They have allowed the fewest high danger goals against. Last season, the Rangers allowed the third most high danger chances in the league and the fifth most high danger goals against. That, my friends, is a remarkable flip of the script. Yes, it's only 20 games, but still, that is a massive, massive improvement of what we have seen from this team over a number of years. When the Rangers were struggling to score early in the year, especially at home, you were probably, as you were watching, saying to yourself, they played really well and they just couldn't score. If they keep doing that, if they keep playing like that, good things are going to happen. That's probably your internal monologue. Okay. You just talked yourself through expected goals. You didn't know that what you were doing, but that's what you were doing. So, why do any of these numbers matter? Well, I think it means that the process is working, right? They're defending, as PJ noted, a lot better since this is probably the best they've defended since the black and blue shirts of 2011, 2012. The coaching is working, right? Give Mike Sullivan a ton of credit there, a ton of credit. Coaches have not been able to get this team to play solid defense for any sustained period in forever, right? As long as I can remember. The players have been buying in. They haven't bought in prior to Mike Sullivan. They've only allowed 27 goals. That's top 2 in the league. Is some of that goaltending? Sure. Absolutely. You can't discount that. But you don't need the advanced stats to tell you that they've generally been playing some excellent defensive hockey. And that creates the ability to sustain and repeat that process. It's just one of those things where, if people don't understand it or they don't want to understand it, they just tend to talk it down to make themselves feel better about not understanding it. Maybe they just hate Steve Valiquette, like Steve Valiquette invented analytics. We clearly did not. Under the hood, the numbers are a lot better than they have been, and that is a good thing. It indicates that they're playing the right way, and that is more important for what they can do potentially in April and May than a string of fortunate wins that they don't deserve to win games like the way that they've had in previous years. So, as far as who they are, I think they're a pretty good team in a pretty average Eastern Conference. We thought it might take them some time to adjust to Mike Sullivan, and that did ring true for the most part. I wouldn't say they're as talented as some of the other teams in the conference, mostly in the other side of it, but that's really nothing new. They have better goaltending than arguably everybody else in the conference, and that's really nothing new either. So despite all of this angst about how they've been losing games at home, Tony Belluccio, stats are great, but when you can't win a home ice, it's concerning. That's bottom line. Get that. If they have just one more win in the first 20, they would have 24 points, and they would be tied for the 5th most points in the entire league. Like, that's just how tight everything is right now. The whole league is just pretty average. Mid, as the kids say. So it won't always be that way, but it is that way right now. They're generally playing good hockey and have more often than not outplayed their opponent regardless of the outcome of the game. Sometimes you win games you're supposed to lose, and you lose games you're supposed to win. That's hockey. No team knows more about winning games when being outplayed like we do. We've been on the right side of those sorts of games plenty of times. Think of just how many times in the last, I don't know, 20 years have you watched a Rangers game and they just get completely boat raced, outplayed, and the goalie saves their ass and they find a way to win. You would need a lot of fingers and toes and other appendages to count those. We know exactly what this is like. Right now, in a lot of the time, we're just on the other side of that. That happens, but that's hockey. Comments coming in. Let's see if they were only 500 at home, they'd be the best team in the league, PJ. Seriously, that's kind of where we're at right now. Dave Voorhees says not making the playoffs. Quick as being a player shows any consistent level of heart. Dominic D'Agostino, I haven't heard any trade rumors yet, but I think that will pick up after the Olympics. Let's see. Mark Brown says no teaching because they aren't learning. Well, we entertain and we educate here. You know that, brother. Need another big defenseman. The deadline's coming up. We'll see where that goes. Dmitry Gavrikov's been a stud on defense. I could not agree more than that's exactly what they needed. We'll get to that in just a little bit. Not upset with their performance. Confused, yes, but not upset. Yeah, I think that's just kind of like that's just the vibe. Like you're not like they're okay. Like there haven't been that many clunker games, right? Calgary was a clunker game. Even the Islanders at 5-0. I mean that wasn't a 5-0 game. That just the end of it just kind of got away from them. Whole league is average except the Leafs. Listen, I drafted the Leafs goaltending in fantasy hockey, so what the hell do I know? Power play, goaltending, and magic. That's the story of the New York Rangers over the past 2 decades. So that's where they are after 20 games, which brings us to the next topic of the evening. I want to play this clip. So BlueTruth recently shared this to the Facebook page, so many of you have probably seen it. And that's okay. We'll watch it again. Frank Seravalli had the following to say on his podcast, The Daily Faceoff.
I don't think the Rangers are in my cup contender category, but I will say that they're one of the more intriguing teams in the league. I know their starts at home have been frustrating. Had to feel good to get out to that 5-1 lead against the Preds on Monday night to kind of snap maybe for once and for all this very odd dichotomy or start to the season between home and road. But I viewed what happened on home ice for the Rangers this year as a blip, an aberration, an oddity. They haven't had any issues scoring on the road where they've been the best road team in the league. And I think the way that they've defended in front of Igor Shesterkin has been so much more impressive this year. I think the Rangers have a better shot to win now than they did at any point over the last 3 to 4 years. You may fight me on that, but that's my view and my take. I think they obviously need to find finishing power and scoring ability, but don't underestimate either the impact of Vincent Trocheck, who returning to the lineup on Monday gives that team such a big boost and support. They struggle in their bottom 6. They need to improve their bottom 6 and become a more deep team, a tougher team to play against and coming at you in waves. I'm still kind of bullish on the Rangers. I'm not saying, I don't think at any point right now that they should be trying to tear it down and rebuild. Maybe they're not winning a Stanley Cup, but also look at the Eastern Conference. Outside of maybe Carolina, who is really standing in your way that you feel like is such a big overarching roadblock?
Okay. Quite a bit to unpack there. But the quote that I really want you to focus on is as follows, and a direct quote from Frank. Frank's awesome, by the way. His podcast is fantastic. I think the Rangers have a better shot to win now than they did at any point in the last 3 to 4 years. Now, does Frank's opinion mean anything? No, not really. Neither does mine, neither does yours. They're just opinions, right? But I want to focus on this for a minute because it speaks volumes when the national media starts saying things like this. Frank talked about how well the Rangers have defended in front of Shesterkin. We talked earlier tonight at length about the high danger chances and the goals allowed and how improved they are over where they've been. When you think back to how the Rangers have generally played in recent years, it's been a high reliance on a power play and elite goaltending And as Mark so eloquently put it, magic. In 23-24, they led the league with 28 come from behind wins. That was a new franchise record. That's really where that whole shtick of no quit in New York was born. You know, it came from the fact that they came from behind so often. Well, the funny thing about that is, you know, if you're playing well from the start, then you don't have to come back as often now, do you? So, you know, the Rangers have not been this stout defensively basically in forever, as far as I can recall. So when you add in the elite goaltending, that is a formula that bodes very well for postseason play. That's something that they can replicate when the ice gets tighter in April and May, when, you know, they don't call as many penalties and it's just, you know, more of a defensive game and the goals don't come as easy. And those are just, you know, it's the style of play that they've shown that they can play at least a quarter into the season. Some of this is certainly, to get to PJ's point, which I'll get to, is certainly the roster changes, because the top, they changed 3 of the top 4 defense. I mean, Dave made the comment as well, that started last season. So, you know, more on that in a bit. Some of it for sure is coaching. Full credit to Mike Sullivan and his staff for getting this team to buy into defensive structure, which is hilarious because, like, all we talked about under Laviolette the first year was structure, because compared to Gallant, any structure was better structure. This is just an improvement on that, frankly. So, you know, people were negative. You know, last year they were 12-7-1 after 20 games, and the whole thing fell apart. The wheels fell off. They missed the playoffs entirely. 2 years ago, they were 15-4-1 their first 20 games. They lost in the third round. It's hard. It's hard to get a read on them, because the reality is they're probably not as good as they've looked on the road and probably not as bad as they've looked at home. It's probably somewhere in the middle, which is kind of weird because everything kind of balances out. They've played enough to at least have a decent comparison to previous years and to see why Seravalli feels the way that he does. And something else that he said, I think, is really interesting. Quote, look at the Eastern Conference. Outside of maybe Carolina, who is really standing in your way that you feel like is such a big overarching roadblock? First and foremost, the Rangers beat Carolina in the playoffs every time they play, except for the stupid bubble 3-game thing. When you look at how well they're defending, the Detroit game aside, I mean, that wasn't great, let's be honest, right? You put that in front of a goalie of Igor Shesterkin's caliber with what he's done in the playoffs. And is there really no road for them the way that they're playing defensively? There is going to be a time to be negative. And when that time comes, believe me when I tell you, BlueTruth will be leading the pitchforks with the Flames. But we're not there right now, right? And I know that that's counterintuitive because of what their record is. They've played okay. I don't see a ton of comments about how well or how poorly they're playing outside of the couple of clunkers, and that's fair. Overall, I think things have been pretty good. Comments coming in. Michael, I actually think the bottom 6 has played very well. That was an interesting point too. And I'm going to get to that in a minute, Mike, because I think when he says bottom 6, he's meaning third line. Everybody talks about that, which we will certainly talk about that. Dave, we have the best road fans in the league. They energize them. They're louder, more passionate, way more knowledgeable, and that's what happens. Well, Dave, I told you, next time you're up in the area, let me know. We'll go to a game together. We'll see if you still feel that way. PJ, Florida when healthy. Florida, savior at Florida until they crumble. Florida's in the way. Florida's always in the way. Florida's got their own problems to worry about right now. So let's see where that goes. I don't disagree with you. They look a little susceptible. Who knows if they get Barkov back at all? I'm just saying, like, you look around and the years of, oh, Tampa and Toronto and Boston are so good. And there's just not a lot of separation. So if it gets into a playoff series, you better damn believe that Igor can be the difference. And that's just Ranger hockey. It's been that way. We've seen plenty of less talented Rangers teams make runs with elite goaltending. Just food for thought. It's only November. We're not even Thanksgiving yet, but just food for thought. So, how does this roster compare to years prior? So, we said coming into the season that we felt this roster was better than the one that won the President's Trophy. That got a lot of comments. Okay, it's fine. I'm used to that. It seems, at least based on what Frank said, he agrees with that. He thinks this is their best shot to win the past 3 or 4 years. That includes a couple conference finals runs. That includes the Kane Tarasenko year. I mean, people will look at this side-eyed because they look at the result of 2 years ago and assume, based solely on that result, that team was better. I've been making this case for a while that I couldn't disagree more with that. If you look at the rosters, the Rangers 2 years ago were a forward short of a full top six, and frankly only had one functional defenseman in their top four, which is why I am so critical of Chris Drury for not pushing the chips in to go trade for Jay Gensel. You've heard me say that once, twice, a dozen times. I'll say it a dozen more. That was his biggest mistake as general manager to me. There hasn't been a ton. I think we counted 5 when we did a show about it. That was the biggest one. Not going all in with that group, with the way everything was structured, was his biggest error. The results are what they are. The top 6 from that year has lost Chris Kreider and a mystery partner, because we know that rotation was stupid. And they added JT Miller, and for the time being, Will Cooley. That's a win. Miller is the type of player that they want the team to model themselves after. Captain, leader, Dave calls him the general. I don't necessarily know about this. Who's their goaltender? And why are people cutting their hands on glass? I don't believe in the Devils. The Devils are the dictionary definition of a regular season team. When it gets into the playoffs, they don't got it. Mark my words on that. Defensively, they rid themselves of Jacob Trouba, K'Andre Miller, and Ryan Lindgren. They brought in Vladislav Gavrikov, and to a lesser extent, Will Borgen. Joe's comment here, ditching Miller for Gavrikov has been super beneficial. Love his play. Will persevere, got to find stable lines. That's a win. People, I see all these comments, guys. People last year, rightfully so, they criticized K'Andre Miller for his poor defensive play, Jacob Trouba for his poor defensive play. And now that they're gone, people somehow think that we're worse. Nonsense. Look at how well they're defending as proof of that. And the goaltending is the backbone of the team as it's been for 20 years. So if you break it down, Trouba's money became JT Miller. Kreider's money became Vladislav Gavrikov. And they really didn't have the money, at least right now, until the cap starts shooting up, to sign K'Andre Miller anyway. So, would you rather? Would you rather have Chris Kreider and Jacob Trouba, or would you rather have JT Miller and Vladislav Gavrikov? I personally feel that it's kind of obvious. To each their own. Gavrikov's a much better defensive player than Jacob Trouba ever was. And, Kreider, I love Kreider, but, his number should get retired. I firmly believe that. At the end of the day, JT Miller is a foundational, captain leader. People criticize Kreider for not wearing the C, and he probably didn't want it. JT embraces it. So, take it for what it is. The power play, still kind of finding its way. They're coming into tonight with a 16.7% success rate. That's 22nd in the league. That's clearly not great. However, would you be surprised to know that that's ahead of teams like Toronto and Tampa Bay and Carolina, who I think we would all agree have significantly better talent up front, whether it's Toronto and Matthews and Nylander and everybody else, or, Tampa Bay with Kucherov and Point and Hagel and everybody else, or Carolina with Svechnikov and Aho, and keep going. I love Logan Stankoven, by the way. I don't think it's a talent issue. 2 years ago, Tampa Bay had the best power play in the league, 28.6%. Carolina's was second at 26.9. The Rangers were third at 26.4. Toronto was seventh at 24 flat. So it's not as if that can't be turned on. I still think they're trying to figure that out. If anything, those three teams, with all that talent they have, maintaining those rosters and their coaches, and them struggling so far, I think that on a comparative basis, that makes it less of a concern for the Rangers. The penalty kill is roughly in the middle league, 80.4%. A couple years ago, it was third best, 84.5. Okay, so 4% difference. It seems like they can probably bridge that. The loss of Trocheck for most of this season has been a pretty big reason for why the team has struggled at times. It's also why it appeared at face value that it was a below average group up front. You look at Panarin and you look at Lafreniere, and they're out of the box, they're struggling to score, and you forget that they were missing their center from when they were the most productive line in the whole league. Because of Trocheck being out, the Rangers had to then use Zibanejad in a role outside of what they really intended for him coming into the season. They're not deep at center, right? We'll talk about Noah Laba here and how important he is in a bit, but he's been really good in the role he's been asked to play, and that's important. But with Trocheck in the lineup, and you just look at it, it's just immensely deeper, and it's how it's intended to be. To Frank's point, where he says, oh, you have to look at the bottom six and you improve their bottom six, I think that, like many others, is an overfocus on the third line, because they need to be critical about something. They get up in arms about Connor Sheary and Taylor Radish. There was a comment, I'm just trying to scroll as to who it was, and it was something about the Sheary experiments, and I'm trying to read very quickly. There you go. Anthony, there you go. What do you think of the Sheary experiment? Seravalli said they had to improve their bottom six. I think there's some truth to that. I think that kind of happens over time. But the whole thing about Sheary, Sheary spent time on the second line because Trocheck was out. That's it. People were freaking out about it. Oh my God, Connor Sheary is in the top six. What are we doing? That's just how the roster fell with injury. We said coming into this season that the third line was going to feel like a bit of a Frankenstein set until guys figured it out. And the preseason view of Sheary, Parsonen, and Radish was kind of basically placeholders. Sheary outright won a spot over the kids in camp. Now, did his previous experience working with Mike Sullivan play a role in that? I'm sure it did. He's a voice that Mike Sullivan knew he could count on with a new group where he's been coaching the same team for God knows how long. What? I don't remember now, 10 years, maybe longer. But the reality is, for his role, he won that job. Brandon Hoffman didn't take it from him. Brett Berard didn't take it from him. Gabe Perreault really shouldn't be a third line guy, which we'll talk about that. He wasn't going to take that third line role, nor should you really want him to. The difference is Noah Laba just took that job from Juuso Parsonen. We'll talk more about that. Perreault had come up for a few games. He'd taken a spot, but that's back up in the air now because he was just sent back down on Sunday. Radish has been fine. I actually went to that Sharks game where he had a hat trick. I did not throw my hat because I liked my hat. Who knows where Taylor Radish is come the deadline. But whether it be from kids taking spots or from some trade activity, that third line is going to continue to transform and evolve over the course of this season. And I don't think we have any idea what it's going to look like for sure after the March 6th deadline. It's my birthday, by the way. Defensively, the Connor Sheary is Carson Soucy. Happens to be the same initials. Who knew? Like they laser focus on him and saying that that's why the defense stinks. Okay. Well, I don't buy that. We went through 2 seasons of massive discontent over how bad Keandre Miller and Jacob Trouba were at playing defense. So I'm not going to tell you that Carson Soucy is going to win a Norris Trophy, but he's been fine for what he's been asked to do. Would I play him on the second pair? No, I wouldn't. I personally would not. I would play Braden Schneider with Will Borgen, and I'd put Soucy on the third pair, and I'd love to see Scott Morrow take that job entirely. They're not doing that. That's okay. Soucy's probably not going to be back next season. His contract's up. Great. That's okay, too. Connor Sheary is not why they can't score at home. And Carson Soucy's been pretty decently well defensively, right? So even though I don't think he's a piece past, whenever the season ends, if your basis for saying the team isn't good is Connor Sheary and Carson Soucy, I also think you're not seeing the forest for the trees. You're focusing on things to support your base case and your predisposition that the team stinks because you want to be negative. And that's your prerogative. Have fun. Do you. I say that to say this. BlueTruth aims to be even keel. I said that at the start of the show. We don't get too up. We don't get too down, especially in the regular season when it frankly doesn't mean a whole hell of a lot in the grand scheme of things. We act accordingly. JT Miller is probably still reeling from his injury. Trocheck just came back. They finally have the top 6 they intended to have at the start of the season. And again, we've said from the summertime, we feel when healthy, this roster is better than the roster of 2 years ago. End statement. Just because we say that does not mean that they will win as many games as that one did. That one won a bunch of games they had no business winning. It doesn't mean that this group, because we think they're better, is going to get to the conference finals. They might. They probably won't. They make the playoffs. Who knows? It's tough. It's a jumbled group. But saying the roster is better is not saying the results will be better. The results for this team, I do feel, will be a lot less smoke and mirrors than what they were 2 years ago, for better or for worse. They're going to be more indicative of what the team is versus thank God for a power play, a goaltender, and black magic. To have 28 come from behind wins. You get so caught up in the moment that you look back on it now and you think of all those games they just had no business winning that they won. And then they get to the playoffs and they get Washington, fine. I will still, to my grave, I thought they were going to lose to Carolina. Even when they were up 3-0, I thought they were going to lose to Carolina. Chris Kreider saved that series, period. I don't think there's any thought there. And then they were a forward short. That's why they lost. It almost worked. It didn't, because you had Alex Wenberg and Jack Roslovic splitting time on your top line. Just not going to win. Comments. Dave, definitely tougher than prior years. The GM, the general number 8, number 39, number 50 hits everything that moves, which is what you're supposed to do. They're not so easy to play against. Brian Fogelstrom, need to start limiting shots. Far too many games where we're getting doubled up on the shot total, uphill battle for our goalters when you do that. There haven't really been that many of those games, though, Brian. Like I said, I mean, it's not, but that's why you look at the shot quality and say, listen, if the shots you're allowing are just, shots from the point, I mean, Igor or Quick are going to see him, they're going to stop him. So if you look at a team like Carolina, for example, Carolina is excellent at suppressing shots and making sure that the shots that you do get are more from the perimeter, that you're not really getting up close because their goaltending isn't really that good. So that is a recipe for success, at least in the regular season. We'll see what happens when they get to the playoffs, and they always seem to fail at that point. But there haven't really been that many games. I mean, Detroit stands out, no question, where they were just outplayed. I mean, Quick just on his head Sunday night. Hank, DQ's an assistant I trust to run the power play. I would agree. Savior, Sherry's played good for where he's played. Should be in the third or fourth line when team's healthy. That's exactly right, and that's where he should be, 100%. The only reason that he was on the second line was because who are they going to play? Mark Brown's liked Sue since he was in Minnesota. Certainly would help if they scored more at home. Ken Richard, roster's trash regardless, not making the playoffs. Years ago, we needed Gensel. Could use Gensel right now, too. But yes, that's, as we said, we've talked about it. That was the mistake. Yes, Bukdevich was a mistake. Not getting Eichel was a mistake. Zibanejad was a mistake. Not keeping Trouba. Keeping Trouba was a mistake. But not getting Jake Gensel at the deadline is they should have won a Stanley Cup. And I firmly believe if they make that move, they do. Because they were a goal short against Florida in every game. And a goal scorer, I don't know. Maybe that makes a difference. Neither here nor there. So let's talk a little bit about Noah Laba. The best story of the first 20 games is that gentleman right there, Noah Laba, who has really put a lockdown on that third line center role. Unlike Brennan Othman and Brett Berard and anyone else you want to talk about in the system, Noah Laba won the job. He earned it. He certainly wasn't handed it. Assuming that the team is going to go with Miller at 1C and Trocheck at 2C for the foreseeable future, I'd like to think is the likely route. Laba can lock down that number 3 center role for a long time to come. And for a team like the Rangers that are really thin organizationally with center depth, Laba producing and filling that role is immensely important. During Vincent Trocheck's injury, it was suggested, I saw a bunch of comments, as you know, I interact with you guys as much as I can, keeps my day going by. It was suggested that Laba play 2C. I felt then, as I feel now, that that's slightly premature. And I understand that he did get some time there. I was not a fan of that personally. There is this tendency among Rangers fans to latch on to any young player that shows any semblance of promise, probably because they don't ever develop anyone. More on that in a bit. We should be a little cautious with crowning Noah Laba just yet. Again, I think he shows tremendous promise as a middle 6 center. Decent size, plays hard, defensively responsible. These are all good things. He's absolutely come out of nowhere to sink his claws into a spot and has not let it go. Kudos to him for that. And it's not to throw a wet blanket on anything, but it's just to keep the emotions in check. Remember, stay even keel. It's only November. That's probably the overarching theme tonight all around. Let the kid play and grow into his role. And an excellent comment from PJ, and I agree, is forcing Laba to play 2C is exactly why they can constantly ruin young players. Dave says play him with Cooley. You know, Ken, Laba, who's very critical, which is fine. He's been a bright spot this year. I agree. I think he's been the best story of the first 20 games. Prior to the game against Detroit, the Rangers sent Gabe Perreault down and brought up Scott Morrow. Arguably, these two are their best 2 prospects. Obviously, Morrow was playing because Borgen was out. Perreault did not look out of place by any means, and I completely agree with those who say that he makes the roster a bit deeper up front. But there's no rush on him either. They're trying to do the right thing with him, and I agree with what they've been doing. It is what it is. I'm not going to make a court case out of it. I will say, as I've said, Gabe Perreault is a top 6 player. I say that because based on his playing style, he is just not a third-line guy. Generally speaking, you don't need that sort of offensive skill and creativity and, finesse. And frankly, Gabe's not a physical player. That's not his game. Like, that's not really the third line characteristics. I'll put it that way. As much as I would like to see Will Cooley stay with JT Miller on the first line, when he and Gabe are on the same starting roster, Cooley is a much better stylistic fit on the third line than he is on the first line. And Gabe is a much better stylistic fit on the first line than the third line. I like Will Cooley a lot. I think Will Cooley can be the power forward this team hasn't had in forever. So him on the first line is perfectly fine with me. I have no issue with it. But there's, so many seats. So if you're going to have Perreault on the team, I think the first or second line is where he should be, not the third, just based on how he is. And I am a huge fan of Scott Morrow's potential. The fact that I have to see guys like Urho Vakanainen and Matthew Robertson play over him just bothers me. It is what it is. I think that takes care of itself over time. Morrow should be a full-time guy in the team by next season. We'll see where that goes, but sky's the limit for him. Very, very happy with that. Cooley, Laba, Parson on the third line gives them 10 plus games just to play hockey. Well, okay, Mark. I mean, that's assuming Gabe's on the first line, I guess. And that's obviously Sheary out of the lineup. Okay. Let's go Rangers. Kenny Richard on the Stanley Cup team. Cooley is not in the top 6. I mean, cool. Don't you see a little bit of Tom Wilson in him, Ken? And Tom Wilson was top 6 for Washington. So, I mean, I just think that that's the kind of player these guys can be. I don't think Cooley necessarily has the physical edge and willingness to be an asshole the way Tom Wilson does, but he doesn't shy away from it. So, like, I think that that's kind of what they want. 5-1 Tampa, and Jay Gensel has 2 goals. Anything for Kucherov? Because my fantasy team needs some help there. Carrick's been great. That's why. I mean, to Frank's point about the bottom 6, like I think that he's focusing more on that third line. The fourth line's been fine. It's been fine. I have no issue with that. We'll talk about Mike. New name. Thank you for watching. We'll talk about development here in a second. Yeah, I just think, again, I'm not saying they're the same player, but it's just a similar archetype is the word I'll use. Someone say I sound like Valicat. Big words make people upset. The thinning out of the summer free agent pool. Well, unfortunately, the more the time goes on, the thinner the pool of potential free agents next summer gets. Connor McDavid, Jack Eichel, Kirill Kaprizov, Marty Necas, Kyle Connor, and now even Adrian Kempe have all re-upped where they are. The plan to weaponize the $31 million that they project to have on July 1st seems to not really be taking shape. That is certainly a problem. It's no two ways about that. Maybe a problem right now. It might be a problem in the future. While I will tell you it is certainly going to be an issue, I do think it will be. The reactions of the base to that, saying that the team should go into this elongated rebuild after deconstructing the roster, are just odd to me. Like, it's just not going to happen. We will all be dead before this team goes into a Detroit-style rebuild. And really, Detroit hasn't been really successful in this Detroit-style rebuild. I mean, I guess Alex Tuch is probably the guy that could be on the market among the forwards. I think I'd certainly have some interest in him pending cost. He's probably the biggest name. Defensively, there's more veteran guys available as right now because they can all sign deals. John Carlson, Rasmus Anderson. Hey, Ryan McDonough's available. So is Jacob Trouba. Just kidding. Who knows? In any event, they will have money to spend. The people who want them to blow it up, the people who want them to blow it up and start over, don't realize what that entails. You are talking about trading away these pieces for futures, which they did in 2004 to very little success, and 2018 to somewhat similar limited success. It means they would have to do something they have been unable to do in, I don't know, about 100 years, and that's effectively draft and develop. All of this while the salary cap rises to new and new heights, and they're to keep the purse strings tight because they're drafting and developing. Why would you think that's even a possibility? And furthermore, why do you want this? This franchise can't develop a Polaroid, and people want them to go out there and draft more and more. Isn't that the dictionary definition of insanity? How do people reconcile the idea of complaining about the Rangers being unable to draft and develop players and saying they can constantly draft the wrong ones and everyone is a bust, with this idea of saying that they then need to go build a long-term roster through the draft? Doesn't that seem a little bit contradictory to you? Isn't that talking out of both sides of one's mouth? Brennan Othman hasn't been able to sustainably crack this pro roster since being drafted in 2021. At some point, it's probably just not going to happen. If it does, what is his ceiling? Seriously, where do you think Othman can top out at? A low-end second-line player? A good third-line guy? Is that what you want out of a first-round pick? And you can go back and talk about all the guys that haven't materialized in forever. Vitaly Kravtsov, Nils Lundqvist, Lias Andersson, Capo Kakko, and so on. Some of those weren't the Rangers' fault, but still. A guy like Gabe Perreault just fell in their lap. Like, he wasn't their bright idea. Lias Andersson was their bright idea. Great, awesome, cool. It really doesn't matter how you get talent as long as you get talent. They don't ask how, they ask how many. The Rangers are not going into a rebuild. They're just not. They don't make the moves they've made to go into rebuild. They have major foundational pieces signed. Yes, it's true. The top end of the roster, especially among the forwards, is getting up in age. We've been talking about the impending age issues for about 49 episodes now. They've moved away from a soon-to-be 35-year-old Chris Kreider. They've got a few months left on the current contract of a 34-year-old Artemi Panarin. They're locked into 4 more years of a 32-year-old Mika Zibanejad. They're locked into 4 more years of a 32-year-old JT Miller. There's 3 more years of a 32-year-old Vincent Trocheck. So to get back to the original point, with a thinning herd of possible free agents to spend the money on, what now? Well, whether you like it or not, they're going to do everything they can to try to win with this group. This idea that they're going to blow it up is just extremely misguided. For one, they can't even do that if they wanted to. These guys have clauses, and they're deeper clauses than the ones that Jacob Trouba had and Chris Kreider had and Barclay Goodrow had. These are ironclad. You can't waive them. You can't even threaten to waive them. So no move clause is. They will be here as long as they want to be here. And this is not to sugarcoat the idea that everything that has happened with next year's free agent class is a huge negative for the New York Rangers. All of these players staying where they are is a very big negative for a Rangers team that was likely looking to add at least one, maybe even more than one. It's not good. Nothing about it is good, other than, okay, at least they're out west. They're going to have to get creative to bring in talent. We will see if they can do that. So the Keandre Miller trade netted them a 1, a 2, and a stud prospect in Scott Morrow. They have 2 1s in this upcoming draft. Would it surprise any of you if they trade one or both of those picks? Wouldn't surprise me. Maybe that's their in to get some young, semi-developed talent, or even mostly developed talent, developed by someone else, because they don't have any demonstrated ability to do it. Personally, I protect Gabe Perreault. I protect Scott Morrow. The picks and the other prospects, okay, whatever. Do what you got to do. And to a comment here from Mike, is it Brockle? I apologize if I butcher your last name. My apologies. I'm guessing it's Brockle. Mistake to re-sign Brad for what he wants in years and money. Mike, if they have no one else to spend that money on, do not be surprised at all if they re-up Panarin. It doesn't sound like he wants to leave, and it sounds like he wants market value. And if we're being honest, market value for Artemi Panarin has gone up significantly given the collapse of the free agent market of next summer, combined with the Rangers' general lack of ability to score out of their top end. I got it right. Thank you. He actually might be the biggest name in the free agent market right now. It's the way things have gone. Realistically, if you're locked into JT and Miller and Trocheck and Laffy in your top 6, and you intend to have spots for Cooley and or Perreault, the only spot you're going to be able to upgrade is Panarin's, if you don't bring Panarin back. If it's the trade market, let's say they look at someone like a Jason Robertson. I know Mark Brown said something about Thompson possibly being asked to move, or Kyrou, yeah. Let's just say it's Jason Robertson for argument's sake. If Dallas is looking to avoid another salary, it's not as if they really want someone like Lafreniere coming back, given what Lafreniere is making. And the reason they would be trading Jason Robertson is because they can't afford to pay him the salary. They will likely need a defenseman or two. So they could be active there. We talked about some of those names earlier. We'll see. But the only people that are talking about the Rangers tearing it down and rebuilding are Rangers fans. Mostly manic depressive Rangers fans. Like, this entire concept is a concoction that is unique to us. It is Ranger fan internal discussion. Nobody else is talking about it. It is not happening. So just get that. It's not going to happen. Like with Igor's contract and Fox's contract, you just brought in Mike Sullivan, you signed Gavrikov. These are not the actions of a team that is looking to deconstruct. Okay. Again, and Mark said the Panarin deal is going to piss people off. It's going to be uncomfortable, but they may not have a choice. They may not have a choice. And my concern is his age. That was my concern with Kreider. That's still my concern with Mika. That at some point, this group just ages out. Kind of already has. We will see. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the passing of Larry Brooks after a short battle with cancer at the age of 75. There has been so much that has been said about Brooks and his impact and how he's a one of one and all of that. And I can't say any of that better than those who knew him said it, so I am not even going to try. But what I will say is that while he was always he was always genuine with his opinions, whether you agree with them or not. And I appreciate that. I am that way too, to a degree. I don't do anywhere near Larry Brooks is a legend. He was also the most plugged in of any of the reporters covering this team. He was very skilled at interweaving his opinion with the tidbits about what was going on behind the scenes. He was as close to a voice of the front office as there was. And his passing leaves just a massive void there. We as Rangers fans will be less informed without Larry Brooks. Jim Schmiedeberg of Blue Shirt Underground, who if you're not following, you need to be following. Those guys are fantastic. I think they're actually out in Vegas tonight. He said this to me at one of the viewing parties, and it stuck with me, that there's Larry and there's everyone else. And while I personally like Vince Percagliano, who just went over to The Athletic, I think he does a nice job with his podcast. I enjoyed listening to it back and forth to work. I don't know if he's going to be able to take that mantle on of that level of access to the inner circle. Same goes to Molly Walker. Like, I just don't see a Larry Brooks type anywhere in the group of people currently covering the team. Everyone to hear what John Tortorella had to say, given the history that they had. I had that little still shot from the, did you get beat up at the bus stop thing? And Torch was great, said all the right things, and that was all great to hear. Larry was just so good at what he did. He is just not really going to be replaced. And, my thoughts are with his family, obviously. As a fan, selfishly, I will miss his insights. I will miss his access. I will miss the way he wrote. It was an enjoyable read. And the fact that we're going to get another Larry Brooks column is upsetting. It won't be the same. Rest easy, Larry, for sure. Jake Gensel should be a Ranger, had a hat trick. At least it's against a team we don't like. So it is now 9:34 on the East Coast. We'll talk about tonight's game in Las Vegas. We've talked about the first 20 games. Tonight's game 21. The Vegas Golden Knights have the same 22 points the Rangers do. Well, they must be terrible then, right? They played 2 less games. They're 8-4-6. Not exactly lighting the world on fire by any means. I will take our 10 wins over their 8 if we're being fair. They have 1 win in their last 6 games. They have 3 wins in their last 11. Here come the Rangers. They have offensive firepower up front. Obviously, Jack Eichel will always be the one that got away for me. I really wanted him very badly. Mitch Marner came from Toronto. He's got 20 points for this team. Pavel Dorofeyev has 11 goals, leads them there. Their power play is 10th in the NHL. Their PK is 21st. So the Rangers will obviously want to limit the penalties that they take for sure, which they did a relatively shitty job of on Sunday against Detroit. They took 7 penalties in that game, and I watched the same game you did. They didn't earn them all, but they did get called on them. You can't get called on. They don't really have a true number 1 goalie. But the guy who has played the most for them is Akira Schmid, who will probably give some of you PTSD about the 2023 series with the Devils, where the Rangemen look like Ken Dryden at times. He's 3-0-2 in his last 5 games. So it's a road game. We tend to win road games, so that means I guess we'll probably win tonight. Mike Sullivan is back after missing the Detroit game with personal reasons. They didn't elaborate on what they were. Whatever. Will Borgen game time decision. We'll see if he gets back in the lineup. Missed a couple games there. This is the first game of just a brutal 3-game road trip that will take them next to Colorado on Thursday and then Utah on Saturday. Tough games. They come home for a Blues game next Monday that I will be attending, assuming that my flight home from Disney late Sunday night actually takes off. Flying out Saturday, doing Jollywood, coming back Sunday, just a quick up and back. Hopefully the planes land. Oh God, I might get stuck in Orlando. The Blues are awful, so that's a winnable game, but it's also on home ice. So hey, who knows? After that, they go to Carolina and Boston around Thanksgiving, and then finish November at home on the 29th with Tampa Bay. I think if they can get 4 points out of the 6 on this trip, the next 3 games, I will take that. I don't think they beat Colorado. I think that they have a decent. I need to get at least a point tonight, and then I want to beat Utah. If you can get, we'll see, because I know it's asking a lot. But tonight, I need to get at least overtime. Then we'll see where it goes. Utah is beatable. Colorado's a bit of a problem. I expect private message from Mike and Craig. I better get DMs from you. Let me know. I'll come say hello. Mike's awesome, by the way. Mike's met a couple times. Awesome to talk to. Craig, we obviously never met, but hey, message me. I'll be in 115. A little bit of interesting news here. This is possibly the Winter Classic jersey. Move that comment out of the way. Hold on. Move that banner. So this, I saw this in one of the Ranger groups. Apparently it's an eBay auction. I have no way of knowing if this is legit, but I will tell you, at least at first blush, it sure looks like it is. It's a bit of a take on the current Centennial. You have the Winter Classic patch on the one shoulder, the New York City Apple on the other. This looks to be the real thing. Now, we don't know that. If not, it'd be a real good fake. Had a conversation about fake jerseys earlier today. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting color scheme with the red collar. I wouldn't tell you that I love it. That doesn't mean I won't get it. I get them all, except for the Stadium Series one, because I thought it was just shit the way they made it. The letters were not embroidered. I hated that. I really hated that. So that's the one I didn't get, but I get them all. I already got a JT Centennial, like I said. Yeah, I mean, PJ's pretty clear here. I'm still gonna get one. I don't know who yet, but yeah, we'll see again. And I don't know that that's real, PJ. I gotta tell you though, if it's not, it looks really good. So I'm going to assume it probably is the real thing. Games in about 20 minutes. So we'll start to wrap up here. We're 20 games in. 21 starts at 10 p.m. tonight. Look, they haven't been great. They haven't been awful on the whole. The next 20 games will take them right to an Islanders game just after Christmas. It'll come sooner than you think. We'll probably try to get something in between now and then. We'll see. Again, overarching theme tonight. Do your best to stay even keeled. Don't get too high. Don't get too low. It's the regular season anyway, right? Like don't let yourself get so deep into this. I mean, you just need to get in. And with the way the conference is right now, I know Ken disagrees. I have not changed my view at all. That they should finish no worse than third in this division. I don't. The goaltending's too good, and they're defending too well. They're gonna score goals. Even crap teams score goals. They'll get that eventually. I do think they get in. What they do when they get there is anybody's guess, but I do think they get in. They might be there for a week. They might shock us all. Who knows? Would you put it past them? Wear it next live. What the JT or the whatever? Well, I got to get it first. That may not even be real. I don't know. That's what it is. It's fine. It looks real to me. Mike, thank you for the kind words. Again, as long as my flight takes off, we're flying home late Sunday night. I mean, again, God forbid, if I get stuck in Orlando, it is what it is. But yeah, I'll be the plan is to be there with Tom Scavetta from our friends at Review and Preview. Those guys are great. Get it with Trouba on the back. No. Oh God, no. I can't do that. But also, Trouba would be a violation of my Chief jersey rule, which I very rarely break. And and this was a poll I put up. People said I was an idiot. That's fine. I only get jerseys, for the most part, of homegrown players. And yes, Adam Fox, a homegrown player. He didn't play a game anywhere else. Exceptions, Mark Messier, Adam Graves. I mean, like there's certain Yogs. There's certain. I loved Marian Gaborik. I loved Panarin. So I actually had a Gaborik that I relettered to a Miller that I relettered to a Panarin. Same jersey. But those are those are the exceptions. Like I can't get his Zibanejad. I don't want one. I can't get his Zibanejad. I can't get a Gavrikov. I have a Cooley. I got a bunch of Foxes. I got a bunch of Igors. I got a bunch of Kreiders, which I still have. I wear them. I don't care. Like I would never get a Patrick Kane. I would never get who else on this team? I wouldn't get a Trocheck just because not a Ranger. Like it's a Ranger, but not a Ranger. PJ, I know the whole thing with the. I think Quick was just frustrated. I didn't have a problem with it. I will say this: I loved the color on color jerseys. They need to, that's the one thing the NBA does well, is you have like a red team and a blue team, or a yellow team and a, like, it's just better than the constant Ranger blue versus a team in a white jersey. Like you get more. I love the look of it. I thought that was just old school hockey at the end. I mean, I was fine. Nikki Fatiou. I had a Nikki Fatiou signed puck, actually, Joe, and I gave it to, ironically enough, I think I told the story before. So my barber in town passed away about, we'll call it 10 years ago. And I walked into a haircuttery, and I come to this woman, and I'm like, what, like 28 years older. I'm like, my barber just died. I need a haircut. And it's the God's honest truth. And in South Jersey, she was a Rangers fan from New York. So just the way it is. Like, she was a big Nikki fan, so I gave her a puck, and she really enjoyed that. Mike, thank you. Thank you for hanging out with me tonight. This is the fun part of what we do. We don't, like I said, we don't do them too often, because I really just tried my best not to overreact to things. And I think that when you just kind of let things sit and simmer a little bit, like, you tend not to do that. So Ty Domi's my next Rangers jersey. He still has his Pruka. Craig has a Dale Purinton. Listen, I had a jersey. I had a Nigel Dawes jersey that I had relettered to Tikkanen, but whatever. I had a Nigel Dawes jersey. Can't get them all. You can't bat 1,000. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. Let's go Rangers. So again, enjoy the game tonight. About 15 minutes to there's Tom, who's going with me to the game on Monday if my plane lands. Yeah, Cam Scattaboo in a Matt Rempe jersey, got into a big brawl with the Judgment Day in WWE at Raw. John Cena's last Raw was at MSG last night. Pro wrestling is great. Elias Anderson was homegrown, but he also never grew. If failure to launch, I would get, listen, you know what? I would get a Perreault. That's probably the one I would like next. I would like a Gabe, assuming that goes on the proper trajectory. I can't get a Scott Morrow. That's going to bother me, but, you know. Joe D'Angelo, you know what? I think that's probably okay if you get a D'Angelo one. I can make an exception on that one. But anyway, guys, listen, enjoy the game tonight. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for liking, following, sharing. We're up over 14,000 followers on the Facebook page. That is all you guys, and I can't thank you enough for making this whole thing as fun as it is. We will catch up soon. Let's go Rangers.